What's up, everyone? So this is a BR600, but this is going to work for quite a bit, or quite a few blowers. The problem is this. It's on. I already kind of ran it, so we don't really need to prime it. Otherwise, you'd be priming it, of course, but this, hopefully it starts. Doesn't throttle up. Completely gutless. So, a couple things to go over before we do that. One, stay tuned to the end. The fix of this might not be the fix for yours. I'll go over a couple other options, so stay tuned to the end for those options if this doesn't work for you. Give you a good couple ideas to chase next. First things first, though, we always want to check the fuel. The owner of this machine uses a blue type of oil, and that's what it looks like. It's a little dirty, but that's just because the machine was dirty when I tipped it over to test it. It feels fine. If it was like a green color, that is aged blue fuel. So don't use that. If you have green, take it out, give it a try next. Next piece of item we're going to check is the exhaust, and I'll explain why. Anyone who's ever seen my videos before knows that I'm not a fan of Stihl. They're overpriced, complicated, low-quality machines. But having said that, Stihl suffers from the usual problem of a spark arrestor. There we go. I think it's plugged. However, I don't even see one in there. So, what I'm looking for, if you're unaware, is there's a screen. That screen oftentimes gets plugged by carbon. And if it does that, it's kind of like getting choked, except from the other end. Two-cycle motor is very, very simple. It can be choked from both sides. I mean, technically any motor can, but two cycles are especially because they are burning oil. So, next we're going to check the other end. The air filter cover comes off just with two screws, but while air filters are important for all machines, these are especially important because they do oftentimes kick up dust, and dust can be a pretty bad thing. But this looks almost brand new, so I don't suspect that being a problem. However, what I do suspect being a problem, I don't know if you can necessarily see at the moment, but you see this choke, lever, handle, knob? The normal ones are not like that. So that could be a problem. This is obviously a aftermarket carb, so that very well could be an issue. However, this is going to be something that a lot of these will suffer from. The next thing I'm not going to really check is the carb, because it does appear like it's pretty new. It has a new air filter. I'm thinking a aftermarket kit was purchased and thought it could be fixed, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this whole cover by taking off the 3 screws for the recoil. And there's 4 screws for this plastic piece, 2 up top, 2 in the bottom. The bottom ones are the hard one. Using a T25, and then I'll bring it back. Now that's off. I had to unplug this spark plug, by the way. But that's a Bosch. At least it's not the Ching Chong's ones. But we need to remove this little cover. It has a couple screws, and then we can get to the valves. Now that we have that done, I am noticing quite a bit of oily residue on top, pretty much everywhere, so it's not great, but it shouldn't really be causing much of a problem. Now, if this was everywhere, it could be a seal. Giving you already some advanced information. I didn't even make you wait till the end. To make this easier on the both of us, mainly me, I'm going to take the spark plug out, because we are going to need to spin the motor over, and spinning the motor over is going to be a lot more, it's going to be a lot harder with the spark plug in, and I know I have a socket for that, but it is somehow escaping me right now. Something you always want to check is the condition of the plug and see if it has a lot of carbon, if it's white, if it's black. Right now it's a little black, but it's not looking horrible. It's pretty much the same color I was expecting it to be, and the gap appears to be pretty good. So don't suspect too much about the valves, or excuse me, the plug. You'd be amazed how many times I get a machine, usually from somebody that tells me that all it needs is a spark plug, and yet somehow they either A, don't know how to change the spark plug, or B, know that's garbage. But it literally, changing the spark plug is going to fix it maybe 1 out of every like 100 times. So this valve is down, which that is on the intake stroke. This is 3/1000. I went to the store and I got a thin feeler gauge. I trimmed the end because this machine naturally can require a special feeler gauge because, well, steel. It seems a little loose. Not much, but a little bit. With such a tight tolerance, any discrepancy in it can cause a big problem. So, I'm going to tighten it. When things are loose, you tighten it, obviously, but just in case you're unaware. You see how much I twisted it there? Maybe like 3 degrees, and it's almost perfect now. Perfect is you should be able to move it freely, but there will be some resistance. You don't want to be able to barely feel anything. So now that valve is on the bottom of its travel, which is where you want to do this. People will tell you that you need to do this on top dead center. I do not believe that. I do not like that, and I do not do that. This one, however, is almost dead on. So, we're pretty good. So I don't suspect the valves were that big of an issue. So we're going to put the cover back on, just exactly the opposite how you took it off. And then we're going to give it a pull again. Except this time, I'm going to get some tuning drivers. If you bought a aftermarket carb, it probably will come with one. If it doesn't, then go to wherever you bought the aftermarket carb and type in 2-cycle tuning drivers, and it'll give you like a set of like 8 or 10 or 12. It's a lot, but one of them eventually will fit into the carburetor adjustment screws here, and hopefully that will work. But while we're here, we're just going to take a quick look and see if anything's obviously wrong. It looks like it was mostly installed right. I mean, I don't see anything wrong. So very well could just be the fact that they installed it right but didn't know how to tune it, which is what I'm hoping for. So let's go ahead and get that started. Okay, everything is on. I don't suspect we're gonna really have fixed it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my flashlight. Probably should have looked at it earlier, what type they are. In fact, I'm not even gonna do that. Usually the aftermarket carbs are a hexagon style. Yep. So, if you're unaware of how to tune a 2-cycle, I have a video on that. The closest needle to the spark plug or to the motor is the low. The one farthest is the high. And obviously the low I think is pretty good because it starts. That's a pretty good indication the low is okay. Might need to be adjusted a little bit, but at least it starts. If it doesn't idle up or rev up though, we could be dealing with a poor mixture with the high screw. However, when you mess with the high screw, sometimes inadvertently you will mess up the low a little bit. So it's a fluid situation. Let's see if I need to put on choke. what happened there? The low, I think, was a little lean, and then I richened it up. So what ends up happening is when you press down the throttle instantly, the high screw will crash course. If you want more detail, like I said, watch my other video. The high screw will start to feed fuel, or the high circuit will start to feed fuel based on what setting it is by the screw. However, in the meantime, there still needs to be enough fuel being delivered to not let it die from the low. So sometimes you might have to richen it up if it kind of falls on its face when you first throw a full throttle at it. Now, once I was able to get to full throttle, I richened it up until it started to blare, like full speed ahead. Then I got a little richer, and then you could kind of hear the engine speed kind of slow down. Then I leaned it out to go back to almost full speed, except not quite there. It needs to be a little rich. Having said that, you should always tune this around the same temperature you're going to be using it, same altitude, all that stuff. But unless you're going in great, like if you're going to blow some leaves in Phoenix, Arizona, and then next thing you know, go to like the Alps, yeah, it's going to run a little different. But if it's like, you know, generally the same, it's not going to be a problem. Having said that, I then went to the low, and you could kind of tell the machine is kind of shaking back and forth. It was too rich. You can smell it, you can hear it. Potentially, if it's super rich, it might even die or be puffing out blow smoke. It wasn't doing many of those, but you can smell it, and it's not so great idle. Kind of showed me that it was running too rich. So at that point, leaned it out to the point where it's running good and idle, and then put it back to full throttle. It kind of bogged a little bit, which just means that it did have enough fuel from the low, but not quite enough from the high. So I richened that one up a little bit again. Same process all over again. I adjusted the idle because it seemed a little low to me. And that's it. So if you have this machine, go ahead and check this. To be honest, the only other thing that I would check, because we already know the fuel's good, the air filter is good, this plug is good, the spark arrestor is good, the valves are good, and the carburetor is good. If this does not work, you might have a bad carb, or you might have to rebuild the carb. If you do that and it still isn't running, you could try doing the fuel filter and seeing if that helps at all. Probably not, unless it's super plugged. Fuel filters usually last a very long time unless you use a very dirty fuel, so that's not a problem. If it's not working, you very well might have an engine problem. So, but that's like 5%, no, 3% of the time. So these little tune-up bits will definitely get you very far in making sure your machine runs perfect. If you like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If this helps you out, put a thumbs up, that helps me out. And I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night.